Hello, hello. It is Thursday, which is my day to be live. And I have in the past done a lot of Facebook Lives, and I'm trying to do more Instagram Lives and seeing how it goes. And I would love to get your feedback on that. So I am going to have a guest on here with me today, and I see she is there. So let's see if we can get her joined in here. All right, hopefully we can get her on here in just a second. And yeah, we should get this.
Hello.
There she is. Hello, hello. How are you?
Hello.
Everything good there?
All good here. It's pouring cats and dogs out, but so it's nice to be talking about somewhere different.
Well, good, good. Well, it's funny. I'm trying to get like my background. Yours is so nice with all your Africa things. Pete says hi. And hey, anybody who is watching us live today, please ask questions as we go along. We want to answer questions. But yeah, I was just saying I'm kind of struggling with my background because I've got this rooster back here.
I like
and
it.
So yeah, well, when my head's here, it looks a little weird, but anyway.
It's okay. Every once in a while, it looks like I have the horns on my head from the mask. So
yeah. And I've got my Kenya. Oh, I'm not doing a very good job. There they are.
Oh, there.
I've got my Kenya pictures there, my elephant, and from my horseback safari. So I'm kind of trying to get it going on. But anyway, so yeah, great to see you. And for our viewers, Liz is the North American representative for Bush and Beyond. And I do want to chit chat a little bit, but before we start doing all that, tell everybody what Bush and Beyond is, and
yeah, absolutely. So we are a portfolio of independently owned and operated properties, and I know Robin and her husband Pete had the pleasure of staying at two of them, right? When you were over in January?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, three.
Yeah.
And Emakoko.
Oh, and Emakoko. Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah. That's all right.
So anyhow, and what makes us, I think, really special is the fact that our owners live there, raising their families there, and you get not only the opportunity to have a fantastic safari experience, but you get to know and really connect with people who live and have lived in Kenya for generations.
And I absolutely love that about that and agree. And, man, you jumped the gun on me. That was like my third question down the list. So, we got that covered. Teasing. Sorry. I'm not very stable with my phone here. I couldn't find a good way to prop it, so I'm kind of holding it. So excuse the jiggling. But so tell us, which, yes, and we will elaborate on that more, because I think that is one of the really special and unique things about the Bush and Beyond properties is the family aspect, and they're small boutique, and family owned and family centric, all of that. So we'll come back to that in just a sec. Tell us how you got involved, how you became a part of the Bush and Beyond family, because I love this story.
Yeah, I'm sort of the example of a warning to people who go out on safari, because it could ultimately change your life dramatically. And in my case, I turned 40 a number of years ago, and my 40th birthday present to myself was to go on safari. And as we were sort of talking about with the owners, pre-COVID days and that's now hopefully getting back, and now that we're all getting vaccinated. But one of the things that happens at the Bush and Beyond properties is our dinners are communal. So the owners kind of host it. It's like a big dinner party. All the guests sit around one table. And while I was there, one of the owners just really reached out to me, and I know Robin has met the Franco family, and sort of asked me what I was sort of planning to do with the rest of my life. I worked in advertising and had decided to take a sabbatical. And I said I didn't know, and they said, how about doing our marketing? And the rest, as we say, is history. So
history, yeah.
Yeah.
And you go back every year, and most of the time, multiple times a year. And so, you've got your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on there. You're not the token like a rep on the other side of the world that doesn't really, that kind of gets the pretty pictures and the email updates. I mean, you know these people really, really well. And that is so, it helps tremendously, because for somebody like me that is working on the other side with my clients that are trying to figure out the best fit for them, as far as, whether it's a lodge or a mobile, doing Nomad, or, some things like that, to being able to call on you and know that you've experienced all this and do regularly is gold. So,
well, and I think that's, that's my role, is to make it easier for you, and particularly for you, to be able to match the right properties with your clients. I mean,
exactly.
because we know, it doesn't matter where they're going, if they don't have a great experience and all the little details are taken care of, they could be at the most fantastic hotel in the world, but if something screws up, they're not going to have an enjoyable time. And so that's...
Well, and that's exactly right. And so, the other important thing about that is that like the other day we were talking, and I was telling you about a client I had with mobility issues. And so we were talking about, which properties might work and which, wouldn't. And it's so great to have that insight, because the last thing you ever want to do is send somebody to a place that looks all pretty and then find out, oh my gosh, there were 25 stairs and there was no way to get this wheelchair up and down them, so it's super important, and I really value this relationship. So, and besides that, we have all these things we found we have in common besides our love of Kenya. We both love tennis. We have Labradors. We love food. We like working out. It's sort of like, oh, we're sort of, kindred spirits, and we're the same age, and we're the same age.
Yeah.
So.
And have boys. I mean, it's,
right, boys. Yeah. and our husbands that double as photographers for us too.
Yes. So. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the properties a little bit. So, today I posted a video about Malo on my feed, and so anybody who's watching this either now, I want to just reiterate, ask questions, please, type them in the chat, go back and look at my feed, and you'll see the video I did about Malo, which I just absolutely, I mean, I love everywhere I go in Kenya, but that really just blew my socks off, and just absolutely loved it. So we talked a minute already about the Frankham family, and they are now third generation, not for the lodge, but at least for being in the country, correct? And started as ranchers, still ranch. And I'm telling the story. Let me turn it over to you, because that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the amazing thing, and I mean, as Robin said, she posted about Malo, and I obviously shared Robin's posters too. And Malo is special to me as well. It's where my husband and I got married. So it definitely is a special spot. But I think it speaks to sort of the ethos of all of our properties, because at all of them, they're longtime Kenyans. So, in the case of the Frankhams, they're third generation, fourth, I think. They might even be fourth. I apologize if I don't know, but for sure, third. And, they've kind of, how every property happened, with the exception of the Emakoko and probably Tangulia, they were really their homes that they sort of turned around and opened up and sort of became lodges. They weren't, we joke about nobody, not one of our property owners are hoteliers. None of them have gone to that hotel.
Right.
They are, we go from the craziest, Emma, who owns the Emakoko with her husband, Anton. Emma's a criminologist.
Oh, wow.
Sophie and Callum, who own Lewa House. Sophie's a naturopath, and Callum's a wildlife biologist. The Frankhams are ranchers. Peach and Lipa, who own House in the Wild. I mean, Peach is a farmer. I mean, that was the family, bean plantation that they turned around and made into an amazing lodge in the Masai Mara. I guess probably the only person who kind of grew up in the business is Jackson Lucia and his partner Dominic, who owned Tangulia. Jackson started out literally at a previous camp as the busboy, and worked his way up to being one of the top guides, in Kenya, and now owns Tangulia Mara with his business partner Dominic.
Yeah, and that is such an interesting story and a great segue. So, just tell a little bit about Dominic and Jackson and where they grew up and how they grew up and why this is so unique.
Yeah, I think the amazing story about Dominic and Jackson is, for those of you who don't know, they're Maasai, and Maasai is probably the most iconic tribe of Kenya. So they're the ones you often see the figures of in the red shukas, and they're tall, doing the jumping with their spears and pangas. And Jackson and Dominic are grade school friends. They've known each other since they were 8 years old. And they're the first Maasai to own and operate a camp inside the Masai Mara, which is technically the homelands of the Maasai people.
Yeah.
And I think what's so lovely about their story is their partnership and how they've come together with different sort of, I guess, parts of the whole tourism puzzle. So Dominic is a conservationist. He has established a number of the community-owned conservation areas in the Masai Mara. And then Jackson is a guide. He is considered one of the top guides on the continent. And so they've come together to build this amazing tented camp right on the Masai Mara. It's completely staffed with obviously all Masai people. And that's what I love about the Bush and Beyond properties, is sort of, we were talking about, is that just sort of innately, without you even realizing it, you're absorbing the culture of Kenya. And that's what makes Kenya so special.
Yeah, it really, really does. And we had the good fortune to spend the one evening together there at Tangulia. And oh, good. I see my friend Jen is watching now, and she was actually talking to me. We were just talking today, actually, about Old Malo and some of the properties. So great timing that she's on here. And we were just talking about Old Malo and then Tangulia. And then, so let's talk about House in the Wild, because you mentioned them. Let's talk about, because we're in the Masai Mara, so we're still gonna, let's stick around there for a minute and talk about them.
And again, I think it, sort of, this speaks to what I think makes Bush and Beyond so much fun is, because they are owner operated, each owner kind of has their own style and flavor. So every camp and lodge that's in our portfolio is obviously completely different, even if they're sort of a tented style or a cottage style, as we call them. So we have our tented camp, Tangulia Mara, we were talking about, which is in one area of the Masai Mara. And then we have Lipa and Tarquin, or Peach is his nickname, Wood's property called House in the Wild, which is a cottage style property, again set on the Mara River, but in a very different area of the Masai Mara. And actually, they combine really nicely together, because you're going to have a tented experience with Jackson and Dominic and the Maasai, and then you go to a very different area of the Mara, and you're going to have a cottage style experience with different sorts of activities that you're able to do, etc. And I think what I love about Lipa and Tarquin, and they're the newest member of our portfolio, is their story as well. And Tarquin took over the family farm. It was they farmed. I mean, people forget that the Mara, has farmland right at the edge.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they decided that they didn't want to be farmers, that they wanted to sort of rewild the land and see if the wildlife would come back in. And that's the amazing thing about Mother Nature and the wildlife. And we've definitely seen it during this last crazy year and a half we're going through. But the wildlife came back. It took less than 10 years to have wild dog, prides of lion, amazing cheetah population, and all the rest of the wildlife come right back into their land. And so it's just a fun story and a really unique spot in the Mara.
Well, and it's been such a success story in the Mara in general, with all the conservancies and the fact that, people, that they did all get together, put their heads together between some of the safari operators and the Maasai, and said, we need to do better here. And like you said, the way that population of the animals is bounced back, and the way it's benefiting the people there too. Now they're getting so much more benefit out of it. It's just working really in I was going to say synchronously. That's probably not a word. Let's say, okay, in synchrony. How about that?
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
love that.
I think it's, like I always say to people, I've been privileged enough, and I've set foot on every continent, But Africa is something special, and I think Kenya even more so. I say it is the cradle of mankind, so I think there's something about that. We all came from that part of the continent. But what I love about Kenya, I often say people come on safari for the wildlife, and if you're privileged enough to come to Kenya, you obviously are going to have amazing wildlife experiences, but it's going to be the people that you go back with the stories about.
Yes.
And what's, spectacular about Kenya is there's, over 50 different tribes. So, we talk about the Maasai, but you're going to meet the Samburu, the Pukat, the Kikuyus. I mean, there's all sorts of different tribes that you're going to run into just by pure happenstance of Kenya. And one of the wonderful things that's happened is the people love their land and love the wildlife. And so we've been able to have these special partnerships that have happened with the traditional tribal people, and they are benefiting from tourism. So as a result, while historically they may have hunted some of this wildlife, they now recognize that they benefit more from a tourism perspective. And as a result, have stopped the hunting of bushmeat, and poaching is down significantly because the community has a vested interest in the wildlife itself.
Yes, absolutely. And that is a great segue into Lewa, because that area has been just an unbelievable success story with rhino and the rhino breeding and in Kenya, and really getting that population back up again. So tell us about Lewa House.
Yeah, and Lewa House is situated on the Lewa Wildlife Conservancy, which is probably one of the very first what we call private conservancies on the continent of Africa, and definitely the most famous one in Kenya. And it was established back in the 1970s. It was originally the Craig families, and the Craig family still lives on Lewa. It was, again, their ranch land. And Sophie McFarlane, who's married to Callum McFarlane, it's her family that she's of the Craig family, and she and her husband now operate Lewa House. And kind of a fascinating story about them, because, her grandparents or great-grandparents, their family motto was leave room for the wildlife. So even though they were ranching there and raising their families, they always felt the importance of leaving room for the wildlife. But where they sort of became a rhino sanctuary was back in the 1970s. And there was a woman named Anna Mertz, who has since passed away, who was very worried about the white rhino population. And white rhinos are not indigenous to Kenya. They're a Southern African species. But she was worried. They were heavily being poached in Southern Africa, and Kenya had banned hunting in the 1970s. So she sort of reached out to various Kenyans to say who would be willing to take some white rhino onto their land. And the Craig family raised their hand and said yes, and became an amazing partnership and success story, to the point that now we have over 100 rhino and over 200 rhino when you take in the whole Lewa Borana ecosystem, and an equal number of white and black rhino. I mean, it's probably the one place I say you don't go without seeing rhino somewhere on Lewa and Borana. And I know you're at Borana, so you know that for a fact.
Yes, and that was one of the most. I mean, every time I go, everything is special about it. But that was really spectacular. One morning we were sitting there, and this big old boy just ambled up the road. He just walked right in front of the vehicle that we were in, and went to his wallow to have a little mud bath. And but before he did that, he actually backed up to a bank there and sat down. I mean, literally sat down and just looked around and had a little, and then he went on and had his big mud bath. So yeah, it's spectacular, absolutely spectacular. So, and then also, Sarara is really interesting, because it's a very different kind of ecosystem there, different terrain, different experience. So yeah, give us that in a nutshell too.
Yeah, I mean, Sarara again is sort of story behind Sarara is the community coming together. So again, surprisingly, the Craig family and the Bastard family were up there in the 70s, and this is the northern part of Kenya, but we're still 500 miles from the border of Kenya, but we're in what we call the northern frontier area of Kenya. And so it's a very incredible scenery. The Sarara, the Naminut Conservancy, which is where Sarara sits in, is surrounded by this ring of mountains called the Matthews Mountains. So you kind of fly over and land in this basin. And we're almost 1,000,000 acres here of land. So it's, you know, an amazing wilderness area. And in the 70s, you wouldn't find an elephant up here. And that was, again, due to the Somali conflict coming down and poaching and various other things. But the Craigs and the Bastards went in there and had a conversation with the Samburu. So we're, again, a different tribe here. It's the northern tribe, the Samburu, cousins of the Maasai. And convinced them to establish a community conservancy area, and that's Naminuk, which means the place of peace. And the amazing thing is, I was just here in February, and we now have herds of up to 100 elephant. There are leopard, there are more giraffe than you can shake a stick at. We now have a pride of lions that have moved in, and I haven't seen lions in that area in my entire 17 years of being going there. And it's a beautiful spot. And so it's wholly owned by the local Samburu. The Bastard family is still involved. Jeremy and Katie are there, the next generation. But actually all the profits go back into the local Samburu community. So it's a wonderful success story. And what's happened since then in sort of, I guess, 4 years now, is Riteti, our elephant sanctuary that was established there.
Yeah.
And again, a really special story because this is the first community owned and operated sanctuary for elephant orphans from this area. And in our 4 years, we're doing our 4th successful release. So these Ellies are going back in and joining their original herds. And it's a wonderful story of what Katie and the Samburu have done with Riteti.
Yeah. Well, and it's fabulous too because I think it gives the people that live in those communities a different sense of what the animals are like when you do interact with them, and they learn that how sentient they are and that there are ways to manage, you know, without it becoming the conflict, you know, the human wildlife conflict that we talk about, that, you know, when these things are when people are educated and when they about the animals and so forth, and then the community members are working with these orphan elephants, you know, it seems like that is just it's a rising tide. Those ships are, you know, coming up with that rising tide. So it's just fabulous. It's a success story on all levels. So
absolutely.
Love it. I love it. Well, I guess the last place we have yet to talk, I mean, we touched on the Emakoko, but and we did spend one night there, and it was spectacular. I was blown away. I couldn't believe, you know, because when you fly into Nairobi, of course, you see the national park there, but I had no idea how much wildlife is actually in the Nairobi National Park in the middle of the city there. It's incredible. And the Emakoko, the way it's built into the side of that hillside there, and it just sort of blends in, but the views are spectacular. The food's wonderful. The Dawas are the best ever. Love that. You know, so but explain a little bit how that works. Their property is private, but they have the access to the park.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, for people who don't know Nairobi, I mean, Nairobi is Kenya's capital city, and it has millions of people living there. But one of the amazing things is that it also has a national park right up against the city. I mean, literally right against the city. Yeah. And it's only fenced on the city side. So the wildlife still is able to move into the Amboseli ecosystem out of Nairobi National Park. But most people, when they're on safari, they fly into Nairobi in the evening. They wake up the next morning and they immediately leave. And I always say it's a huge shame because Nairobi National Park is home to spectacular wildlife. And if you're not getting up into that Lewa Barana Conservancy area that we were talking about with the rhinos, there are equal number of rhinos in Nairobi National Park. So,
that was amazing.
It's the one other spot I sort of guarantee you'll see rhino and a game drive. And then obviously all the rest, you're going to see, you know, the lions. The only thing you do not find in Nairobi National Park is elephants. And that's just because we don't want them going into neighboring people's gardens in the city. You know,
better for the elephants and for the people.
Though we have had our lions go into city traffic. But what I love about Anton and Emma Childs and the Emakoko is, you know, similar to all our other families, like the Francombes and the Bastards and Jackson and the Woods and the McFarlands, is They're Nairobi kids. Both Emma and Anton grew up in Nairobi and realized that people didn't use Nairobi National Park. And
Right.
they felt it was really important that you kind of start your safari as you mean to go on. So they built the Emakoko Lodge, and it's literally across the river from Nairobi National Park. But more importantly, because of their relationship, and like all of our property owners, the relationships they have with their local community, they were able to work very closely with the Kenya Wildlife Services and get the rights to access Nairobi National Park at any time of day. So not only do we get to have that amazing wildlife, but we get to use Nairobi National Park as our shortcut. And Nairobi is a large metropolitan city. And so needless to say, it has traffic like all large metropolitan cities. So it's kind of fun to use Nairobi National Park as your shortcut. And, you know, and happen to have your traffic jam be maybe, oh, I heard a giraffe going across the road,
or a rhino, or a few ostrich, you know. Yeah, exactly. No.
Yeah. And I just love that philosophy of let's start your safari as you mean to go on, and I think that just makes it so special, and it just, you know, sets you up for the rest of your safari experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even, you know, if for some reason you do need to get right out on your safari, you know, we kind of did it in the middle when we were passing through. So we went from the Mara, and then we spent a night at the Emakoko, and then we went on to Diani Beach, and had a great experience at the Indian Ocean. So, you know, and I can even see doing it at the end as well, because, you know, it's just really relaxing, and there's still, like, especially if you hadn't gotten to see rhino or something, you would get to see it there. So it's pretty neat. It's pretty great place.
And you can also use it for your shopping trip at the end too. If you didn't get your shopping in, I mean, we talk about the safari side of it, but let's be honest, you can also safari into the city and do a little shopping as well.
You have to do your shopping at the end. I mean, I think Pete wasn't quite prepared for what that meant at the end of this trip when he went with me this time, that was like a full-on day. That was like that was as strenuous as any safari day we had, was the shopping day.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you have luggage restrictions, you kind of need to leave it to the end. Exactly. So, well, if you have one more minute, because we do still have some people hanging with us here, so I would love to talk a little bit about Omalo's Nomad and the helicopter experience. Obviously, I got to experience it, but you talk about Nomad a little bit and tell us all about that. Yeah. And I apologize, you're going to hear my dog for some reason. There's something in there.
It's all right.
Yeah, you know, one of the wonderful things, again, as I said, you know, the Franco family who own Omalo, their next generation, which is Andrew Franco, who's the son of Colin Rocky, and his wife Chulu, really wanted to kind of start showing people the way they like to safari, and the way we traditionally safaried, which was mobile. I mean, that's kind of how the safari, I mean, safari sort of means to journey. So what they've done is they've created Omalo Nomad, which has sort of two products in it. And one of them is, Tulu is an equestrian, so we can do horseback riding or walking safari supported by camels, and it's fully mobile. So you go out and either walk or ride and walk into camp that is set up for you, and camp moves along with you, which is an amazing experience. And I know you are an equestrian, so you've done it from a riding perspective. Dean and I are not equestrians, so we've done it from the walking perspective.
But you rode at Sarara, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I can ride, but not for long distances. You know, I'm the typical girl who took a few years of riding lessons.
Right.
But it's an amazing experience to be able to be out there and have your own private camp and be experiencing it, you know, in that sense. And then Andrew, who's following in his grandfather's footsteps, is a pilot. And flies fixed wings planes, but also has two helicopters based at Omalo. And Andrew flies one, and he has another pilot to fly the other. And what that allows you to do is, as you and Pete know, get into some just places that you cannot believe are on this planet, let alone, you know, in Africa. And, you know, with a skilled pilot, you can land, you know, pretty well anywhere, and get out and have some just mind-blowing experiences. And I always say, I can show you all the video and you know it firsthand. You can talk about it, but until you actually experience it, there's just no way of describing what parts of Kenya look like. I mean, some look like the crater of the moon, some look like the deserts of the Sahara, some are these turquoise lakes. You know, it's just spectacular.
And the flamingos, I mean, are just mind blowing. So no, that was absolutely.
And I would say, even if you're not doing the full day like you and Pete did, and getting yourself all the way up to Turkana, to just have, like, I've had Andrew fly me just from Malo up to Sarara and you know, land on Cat and Mouse Mountain and have a cup of coffee up there. It's just, you know, spectacular.
Yeah, it's spectacular. Exactly. No, well, it's all spectacular. And we had such a, I mean, Pete even got on a camel. We had our little morning camel ride, and then we had breakfast with Colin under a tree there by the dry riverbed. And, you know, the whole thing was just spectacular. And I know that I'm kind of gushing on Malo, but I do want to also just reiterate again that all of these properties are just so special because the people that own them and run them, like you said, they're their family homes. And when you come to them, you are treated like family in the very best way. You know, it doesn't feel overdone, over pretentious. They just make you comfortable. And it's just a fabulous experience at any one of them. And I'll also remind anybody who's either watching now or on the replay that I'd love for you to sign up to get my weekly email update, and that can be done at my website, which is Klein, which is CLINEAND, travel.com, and there's a form right there to fill out. Just put your name in there, your email address, and all these kind of things that I do. I do all these lives each week and lots of other information about lots of travel. Would love for you to get that. And of course, would love for any of you to join us on our trip in January 2022, coming back to Kenya and hopefully going to Malo and some of these other properties. So we'll see how many people we can entice with that for January. But in the meantime, Liz, thank you so very much. I always love talking with you, and someday we're going to get on the tennis court together. I don't know when that's going to happen, but we're going to do it. And and hopefully we'll be having a tusker together as a sundowner before too much longer as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the hilarious part is I'm going to be over in Kenya in January, so we're going to have to work our little schedules and have a meeting in the Mara like we did last time, or at Old Malo or wherever.
Or something. Yeah, we'll have to contrive. We're going to have to contrive some sort of very important business meeting, I think. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us. And if you've got any questions about planning safaris, I would love to talk to you about that. And we can always bring Liz in on the conversation on any of these properties anytime. She's always happy to help us. So if there's questions we haven't answered today or things that pop into your mind afterward, just reach out and we'll continue on the conversation.
Great. Thanks, Robin.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Liz. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.